Another year of the NFL. Another non-losing season for Tomlin. And another first-round playoff exit for the Steelers. Nothing is new under the sun. Mike Tomlin has become the master of mid. And he absolutely should be fired. As I'm recording this, the final seconds just ticked off the clock in the Steelers' playoff game against the Ravens. And Mike Tomlin should be gone as soon as he steps off the podium from his post-game press conference. And apparently that's a controversial take among Steelers fans. I've seen it all over social media throughout the season and in recent years, but it's really ticked up this season over people arguing that Tomlin should be fired, with other people saying, "You're crazy, you're not a real fan, don't watch this team, don't root for this team, don't support this team if you think Mike Tomlin should go." Well, I'm going to make the case as to why Mike Tomlin needs to go. And if you aren't one of those people who are religiously obsessed with Tomlin, take a listen. Because anyone who is religiously obsessed with Tomlin would be gone already when I first said he needs to go. The argument is that he is a great NFL coach. He's never had a losing season in his 18 years. Cool. We haven't won a playoff game since January 15th, 2017. We were 4 days short of 8 years since our last playoff win. And we're going to have to go at least another year now to get it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the purpose of playing in the NFL to win a Super Bowl? Not to just not lose more games than you win. But Mike Tomlin did win a Super Bowl. Yeah. Back in 2008. The 2008 season. Before Obama took office. That's when Tomlin won a Super Bowl. He hasn't won one since. He hasn't won a single playoff game since January of 2017. How long is that? In that span, Trump has been inaugurated, served a full term, lost re-election. Biden has served almost a full term, 9 days short, and Trump has won election again and is about to be inaugurated for his second term. That's how long it's been since the Steelers have won a playoff game. But Tomlin's never had a losing season. I suppose to some people, they're willing to make that trade-off. We have no losing seasons and no playoff wins anymore. If you want to make that deal, okay, that's a terrible deal in my opinion. I would gladly take a few losing seasons if it means we actually win in the playoffs eventually. I've seen plenty of people say in response to calls for Tomlin to be fired, "Oh, he'd have another job right away. Someone would instantly hire him and pick him up." So, that doesn't mean we need to keep him. Someone else wants to not win a playoff game at all? Take him, fine. I hope the Browns, Ravens, or Bengals hires him then. So that way we can guarantee at least one of our division opponents never win a playoff game. Now, the Browns are doing that on their own anymore, but be happy to send them to Baltimore or Cincy. So that way We don't have to worry about them ever winning a playoff game. I don't care if he finds another job right away. Let him hold back some other organization. And he's such a good coach. And he's a guaranteed Hall of Fame coach. He's never had a losing season. A third of the seasons he's been our coach, we haven't even made the playoffs. Now, if you make the playoffs 2/3 of your seasons, that's good, yes, but for a great coach who you're insane to think about, supposedly, for wanting to fire, who's never had a losing season, you should make the playoffs more than 2/3 of your seasons. Look at Belichick in New England. He was the Patriots coach from 2000 to 2023. And they only missed the playoffs 6 times. The same number of times the Steelers have missed the playoffs already in 18 years under Tomlin. Andy Reid has missed the playoffs 6 times, but he's been a head coach across 2 teams since 1999. Yet, Tomlin's already done it in only 18 years. A great coach makes the playoffs more frequently. And are you certain that Mike Tomlin's going to make the playoffs the next 7, 8, 9 years to get his ratio up with Belichick and Reid? I don't think so. So let's look at what the master of mid, Mike Tomlin, has done in the playoffs since his last playoff win against the Chiefs in the divisional round in 2017. By the way, that's when I realized Kelsey was a whiny little bitch. Because he was whining that, I believe it was an offsides against the Chiefs, gave the Steelers an easier field goal. I think we had missed it and allowed us to retry it. And then we got it. And that won us the game because it was 15-16 and that field goal put us up 18-16. And Kelsey was whining after the game because you called a penalty that we committed and it cost us the game. You don't want a penalty to cost you the game? Don't commit the penalty. He's still doing that. Remember last year when he threw a fit because they called back a cool play on a false start. So what, just don't enforce the rules of the game? Okay. Anyway. Since that playoff win, here's how the Steelers have done in the playoffs. A 19-point loss to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game the next week, where we gave up 36 points. The following season, only a 3-point loss, but it was to Blake Bortles and the Jaguars, where we gave up 45 points. But we scored 42. Yeah, we shouldn't have to score 42 points against Blake Bortles and the Jaguars. And we still lose. Next playoff game, an 11-point loss to the Browns. The Browns. We lost to the Browns at home in the playoffs with Mike Tomlin, where we gave up 48 points. 48 points to the Browns at Heinz Field. By the way, shout out to the Browns for abandoning Baker like a year or 2 later for Deshaun Rubdown. I'm happy to see Baker doing well in Tampa because it makes it even funnier how much the Browns suck. The following year, a 21-point loss to the Chiefs, where we gave up 42 points. 2 years later, a 14-point loss to the Bills, where we gave up 31 points. And tonight, a 14-point loss to the Ravens, where we gave up 28 points. So across those games since our last playoff win, The defensive-minded head coach, Mike Tomlin, who is supposed to build great defenses, has given up an average of 34.8 points a game in the playoffs. The Steelers have scored on average 24.2 points in those games. More than a 10-point loss on average. A 2-score loss in the playoffs every year. We haven't even broken 21 points in the playoffs in the past 3 playoff games. We're getting worse over time. This year we scored 14. Last year, 17. The year before that, 21. We just keep going down. So what, the next time we make the playoffs, we're going to score 10? Yeah. That's your great head coach, Mike Tomlin. Another interesting point about this great head coach that we've had for 18 years. Across those 18 seasons, only 4 of those seasons have the Steelers gotten a playoff win. Only in 2008, 2010, 2015, and 2016 have the Steelers won a playoff game under Mike Tomlin. That's 22.2% of seasons with Mike Tomlin. 4 of 18. Less than a quarter of the seasons with Mike Tomlin do we get a playoff win. Even before this lengthy drought of no playoff wins, that was still only 40% of the seasons. Less than half of a great coach. Now, granted, we did win a Super Bowl in that time and go to another, but outside of that, he's really done nothing as a head coach. It's been a while. Eight years since any playoff win. 14 years since any significant achievement in the playoffs of making the Super Bowl. We only made the AFC Championship game thrice. And even if you look at his playoff wins, they're still not that impressive. The last playoff win, the 2016 divisional against the Chiefs, it was all field goals. And we only won because of that false or offsides that Kelsey was complaining about. Otherwise, we lose that one. 16-15. The game before, we beat the Matt Moore-led Dolphins. It's not very impressive to beat Matt Moore. The year before that, we beat the Bengals when they did those back-to-back personal foul penalties, where we had a turnover on downs because we, didn't get the conversion on 4th down. But Burfict hits AB, gets us 15 yards. Pac-Man Jones gets a personal foul, gets us another 15. So instead of turnover on downs, we get into field goal range and get the game-winning field goal. Again, 18-16. So that game, Mike Tomlin didn't win. He didn't outcoach Marvin Lewis. The Bengals just shot themselves in the foot. Now, you could say the coach keeps his players under control, so in that way he did outcoach Marvin Lewis. Fine. But still, it took 2 personal foul penalties on the same play to win that game. And you lose to Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. The AFC Championship game that year, you beat Mark Sanchez. That's nothing. I mean, yeah, he made the AFC Championship game, but still, it's still Mark Sanchez. The divisional game against the Ravens that year, yeah, okay, I'll give it to Tomlin. The 2008 Super Bowl, You beat 37-year-old Kurt Warner and the 9-7 Cardinals. That was his Super Bowl win. Not exactly impressive. And then, to be fair, the divisional and championship game that year against the Chargers and Ravens, those are good. I'd rather have those. But that was all the way back in 2008. Since losing in the Super Bowl to the Packers in 2010, Tomlin's won 3 playoff games in 14 seasons. That's not good. I don't know why people are happy settling with that, but we shouldn't be. It's embarrassing. And here's something else more embarrassing. I'm going to read off the list of all the teams who have won a playoff game more recently than the Steelers. Falcons, Colts, Chargers, Patriots, Vikings, Seahawks, Titans, the Browns. The Browns have won a playoff game more recently than the Steelers. Saints, Rams, the Jaguars, Giants, the Daniel Jones-led Giants have won a playoff game more recently than the Steelers. Cowboys, Bengals, Eagles, Texans, Bills, Packers, Buccaneers, Ravens, Lions, 49ers, and Chiefs. 23 of the 31 teams in the NFL have won a playoff game more recently than the Steelers under the great head coach Mike Tomlin. Feel free to go through and look at all the head coaches who won games with those teams more recently than the Steelers. Are all those coaches better than Mike Tomlin? Probably not, but they at least won a playoff game. And I don't care if they may have had a losing season or two. They got closer to the Super Bowl than the Steelers have recently. That's 3/4 of the league who has won a playoff game more recently than the Steelers. That is embarrassing. The only teams we've won more recently than Dolphins, Raiders, Redskins, Jets, Bears, Cardinals, Panthers, Broncos. For the most part, the bottom barrel of the league. And even some of the bottom barrel has done it better than us, like I mentioned with the Browns, the Jaguars. And the Redskins and Broncos are still in the playoffs, so they have a chance to take themselves off that list and make that list of teams who have won more recently than us even more embarrassing. It's time to accept the fact that we are never going to win another Super Bowl with Mike Tomlin. And an interesting thing is, I said this in some comment section a few weeks ago. Or I said we were never going to win a Super Bowl with Mike Tomlin. And some half-brained idiot came back, "Oh, we already did, actually." No. Anyone with an IQ above the freezing temperature of water in Celsius would clearly know that when I say that, I mean we're never going to win moving forward. Obviously, we won back in 2008 with Tomlin, but it's never going to happen again. So, I don't know who needs that very simple logic clarified. But if you're listening to this, guy who said that to me, get a CAT scan, because there might not be a brain in there. To further illustrate how bad Mike Tomlin's gotten, and how bad he's been since our last playoff win, every year, except for 2017, we've gone on a 3 or more game losing streak in the season. Every year, he just skids across a few games, and really throws us back. This year, we ended the season on a 5-game losing streak, if you want to count the playoff game. And that's the end of the season, at the point when you should be doing your best. No, Tomlin falls apart. We lost to the Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals, and Ravens again. The last 5 games we played, lost them all. We were 10-3. We had every ability to win the division. And a decent shot at the first seed. But instead, Tomlin's. We go 10-7, become the 6th seed, go on the road, lose, we're out. In 2023, went on a 3-game losing streak to the Cardinals, Patriots, and Colts. All 3 who had losing records. Cardinals and Patriots, who both finished the season 4-13. At most, you could say the Cardinals didn't have Kyler Murray for a lot of the year, and so their record isn't reflective of how good they were, but still, 4-13. In 2022, we went on another 4-game losing streak to the Patriots, Jets, Browns, and Bills. The first 3 teams all had losing records. In 2021, a 3-game losing streak to the Raiders, Bengals, and Packers. In 2020, the year we started 11-0, we then went on a 3-game skid against the football team from Washington, who went 7-9, the Bills, and then the 4-11-1 Bengals. We lost 4 of our last 5. When we started 11-0 to go 12-4, and guess what? First round playoff, that's it. In 2019, we went on 2 separate 3-game losing streaks to bookend the whole season. Started off with losses to the Patriots, Seahawks, and Niners, and then finished the season on losses to the Bills, Jets, and Ravens. Now, the people who are perfectly okay with absolute mid will try to defend Tomlin and say, oh, that was the year Ben was hurt and we had bad quarterback play. In between the playoff or the losing streaks, we went 8-2 with bad quarterback play. So why did Tomlin just fall apart at the start and the end of the season? At the start, I could give it to you because he's trying to navigate, without Ben. But at the end, when we were 8-5 and go 8-8 and miss the playoffs, no, bad quarterback play is not an excuse. In 2018, lost to the Broncos, Chargers, Raiders in a 3-game losing streak. The 6-10 Broncos and the 4-12 Raiders. And in 2017, miraculously, no 3-game losing streak. But some of the Tomlin fanboys with IQs lower than room temperature are going to point out that, oh, you listed some of the team's records, but not all of them. And there were, losing streaks in there too. All good teams. Like this year, Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs, all playoff teams. Bengals, almost playoff team. Well, if you're going to defend a losing streak against good teams, you're basically saying it's okay that we will never win a Super Bowl. Because guess what you need to do in the playoffs? You need to beat 3 or 4 good teams in a row in order to win the Super Bowl in the playoffs. Or in the rare occasion where you get a lucky draw against a 7-9 division winner in the first round. But even then, you could be the defending Super Bowl Saints and lose to that team in the first round. But generally, you're going to have to beat 3 or 4 good teams in a row to win the Super Bowl. And if you can't do that, you're just accepting that we're never going to win the Super Bowl again because you're okay with the master of mid, Mike Tomlin. Oh, well, he got, 9-8, 10-7, so I'm happy. Cool. I want to win the Super Bowl. I will take losing seasons to win the Super Bowl. Any coach who falls apart like that constantly is not a good coach. Another point is how Tomlin, even with those non-losing seasons, barely does it. And I'm not saying it as like, 8-8 or 9-7. He's just above a losing record. No. He constantly can only win one-score games. You might say, oh, that's a good coach because it's a tight game, but he still came out on top. No, it means he either loses a game badly, for the most part, or just barely wins. You're not taking these big, decisive wins against teams that you should be beating. Bad teams, you're still only beating by one score. A good coach can solidly beat bad teams or average teams. Yeah, save the one-score wins for, the other really good teams that, you outcoach, you outplay. But since that last playoff win, at least half of the wins every season have been one-score wins. Because we barely pull it off, and we pull it off against bad teams mostly. In 2024, 5 of the 10 wins, one-score games. 23, 9 of the 10 wins were one-score games. 22, 7 of the 9 wins, one-score games. 21, 7 of 9. 20, the year we started 11-0, 7 of our 12 wins were one-score. 2019, 6 out of 8 of our wins were one-score wins. 2018, 6 of our 9 wins. 2017, 8 of the 13 wins were one-score games. Since the last time the Steelers won in the playoffs, the majority of our wins have been one-score wins. In those 8 seasons, 69% of our wins have been one-score games. Because we can't decisively win games. It's either a blowout loss or we just barely win. Every Steelers fan knows what I'm talking about, including Tomlin fanboys, about how every week it's a heart attack as to if we're going to win or not. It always comes down to the end, no matter if we're playing a great team or a terrible team. It's always close because Tomlin can't pull away from bad teams. Again, he's not a good coach. He needs to go. You can see it with the staff he keeps around him. Tomlin doesn't have a coaching tree like other great coaches have. No one from his assistants really ever go on to do anything in the league. At most, Bruce Arians, his first offensive coordinator, but he was already in the organization before Tomlin. Now, granted, when Tomlin became the head coach, he did make Arians the offensive coordinator. But outside of that, none of Tomlin's assistants have done anything. At most, you have Danny Smith, who is the greatest special teams coach of all time, who Tomlin probably hates because he's actually good at his job. If you look at it, amongst the offensive coordinators, it seems like every hire Tomlin makes gets worse. You got Bruce Arians, then Todd Haley, who, by the way, I have to apologize to Todd Haley. I wanted him gone during his last couple of seasons as an OC. And clearly, that was a mistake. He was easily better than any of the offensive coordinators we've had since. Although it almost certainly is due to Tomlin's terrible hiring. Haley to Randy Finkner to Matt Canada, each a step down. And then Arthur Smith has been an improvement over Matt Canada, but it's really impossible to do worse than Matt Canada. It's like getting brain cancer and say, oh, well, it could be worse. No, I kind of can't. But Arthur Smith was terrible on his play calls this year still. Even when there was a slight improvement in the coordinator, it's only because he literally had the worst possible coordinator on offense, and you literally had to do better. So many better people, I'm sure, would have been able to come in and actually do something, but I'm sure Tomlin's game planning also is terrible and holds back the team. And you can see that Tomlin is not good as a coach by just the culture of the team. I mean, watching that game against the Ravens, we just lost. No one looked like they were trying. It was that way for the last few games of the season. Everyone just seemed to have given up. And it happens a lot where players just don't look like they're trying because clearly Tomlin doesn't enforce a good culture. Oh, he has good sound bites, sure. And every player says they want to play for Tomlin. Maybe because he lets them goof off and just slack off. I mean, we've always had locker room issues under Tomlin. People say, oh, he's such a great coach because he keeps these locker room issues under control. No, we're constantly running around with locker room issues. You don't hear these problems under Bill Belichick or Andy Reid or Sean McVay, Dan Campbell. Great coaches don't have locker room issues. Tomlin's always had them, especially in recent years. Something about him is just not good. And look at the coaching itself. We've always known he's had terrible time clock management. All the time, there's multiple games a year where people are saying, yeah, that was really bad clock management by Tomlin. I mean, in the Eagles game, you punt it away and then never get the ball back because you don't recognize where the clock is, and we end up losing the game because the Eagles just hold on to the ball for the rest of the game. Or he'll just let the clock run when we got timeouts and waste 40 seconds of time because he just doesn't have clock management skills. I don't know how. Same thing with challenges. It feels like he's always challenging things that are obviously shouldn't be challenged and not challenging things that obviously should be challenged. Just these important aspects of being the head coach, and he just doesn't have them down. And for the people still trying to push the Super Bowl win as an argument as to why to keep him, yeah, he won it as the head coach, but the team was built by Bill Cowher. Just look at the rosters. Of the starters, 5 of the offensive starters were the same. Now, that's not the majority. Ben Roethlisberger, Willie Parker, Hines Ward, Heath Miller, Matt Starks. Your quarterback and your skill positions are all the same. Your at least top skill positions with your number 1 receiver and your number 1 tight end. The offensive line was the only thing that was different. But anyone who knows anything knows that that 2008 Super Bowl win was because of the defense. 8 of the defensive starters on that team were the same across the seasons. Aaron Smith, Casey Hampton, Brett Kiesel, James Ferrier, Larry Foote, Ike Taylor, Troy Polamalu, and Ryan Clark were the same starters on the 2006 team to the 2008 team. 8 of 11 starters on the side of the ball that won us the Super Bowl were the same between Cowher and Tomlin. And then on special teams, Jeff Reed and our long snapper were the same. So across the 24 starters, 60% of them were the same. 8 of 11 on defense. But the guys who were starters on the 2008 team that weren't on the 2006, a number of them were still on the team in 2006, so they were still there, brought in by Cowher, and they just became starters under Tomlin. On offense, you have that with Chris Kiyamatu and Willie Colon. They were already on the team. So instead of 5, that elevates it to 7. On the defense, James Harrison, and Bryant McFadden were already on the team. So that's 10 of 11 defensive starters in 2008 on the 2008 Super Bowl team who were on the team because of Cowher. Yes, the coaching is still important. And, you probably can't throw me in a head coach back in that 2008 locker room and still win the Super Bowl, I'm sure. But most of that team was built by Bill Cowher, not Mike Tomlin. That was Cowher's team that Tomlin went to the Super Bowl with. We see what happens with the guys after the last of Cowher's remnants leave. Ben Roethlisberger, I'm pretty sure, was the last one that Tomlin or that Cowher brought in that was still on the team. We haven't done anything since Ben left. And since the last of Cowher's guys were gone, Steelers have just gone downhill and can't win in the playoffs anymore. So even the positive things about Tomlin, you can see, aren't as good as you think they are when you actually look into them. Yes, Tomlin's never had a losing season. But he hasn't won a playoff game in 8 years. This is Pittsburgh, the city of champions. We should expect better. And we should demand better from our teams, especially the Steelers. If any listeners, the Pirates are a lost cause until Bob Nutting probably dies because he's not selling. And then the Penguins won't fire Mike Sullivan for some reason because apparently, Pittsburgh just doesn't fire bad coaches. But the Rooneys should do better. They should be better. They need to fire Mike Tomlin. He absolutely has to go if we want any chance of winning the playoffs. I'm sick of losing the playoffs all the time. I'm sure every other Steelers fan is. And there's your problem right there. It's Mike Tomlin. He has to go. Mike Tomlin is the master of mid. And the Steelers deserve to be better than mid. The city of Pittsburgh deserves better than mid. It's time to fire Mike Tomlin.